out that a good set of pallet forks works really good for cleaning up brush. You don't have to have a $2,000 set of grapples. All right, guys, I've got a little bit of a helper here today, so pardon the little dog here. She's going to be all over the place. Anyway, it is time now to give you my thoughts on these two machines. Now that I've had an opportunity to ride both of these machines for a while, time to compare them and tell you what I think about them. So if you haven't been following along, what we've got here is the 2022 Suzuki KingQuad 750, and this is the 2022 Can-Am Outlander 570. Now, why are we comparing a 570 to a 750? Well, this is why. They're almost identical on paper. This machine is 1.6 horsepower stronger than this one. Virtually identical. You're not going to notice the difference. 48 horsepower, 50 horsepower. If you round up, I mean, it's pretty much a tie. Both machines have a CVT transmission. Both machines have 25-inch tires. Both of them have differential traction aids in the front end, selectable 2- and 4-wheel drive. The list goes on and on. On paper, both of these machines compete directly against each other. The interesting thing about it is that this machine is quite a bit more expensive. The Suzuki is going to run you somewhere around $1,500 more money. So the question is it worth it? Well, I guess the best way to do this is just to categorize different aspects of these machines and just kind of go down the list. So let's start with suspension. Both machines have independent front and rear suspension. Both of them have adjustable suspension. You can turn the collars and you can adjust the suspension up and down. So they're very, very identical in that regard. The Can-Am has, as they do on a lot of their machines, it has a very different setup as far as the control arms are concerned, which gives you more ground clearance in the rear. Some people like it and some people don't. Some people feel like the way that the geometry is on those A-arms makes it handle a little bit squirrely. I didn't really notice that. I feel like as far as handling goes, the two machines are pretty similar. So the suspension is pretty much identical. We have both of these on the softest possible setting, and honestly, I think both of them are too firm. Ideally, you would valve these things and put coil springs on them that have a softer rate so that when you dial them all the way down, you've got a plush, soft, comfortable ride, and then you still have the ability to adjust them up if you want them to be more firm. That would be the ideal way to do it. But unfortunately, the very softest setting is still very firm. So because of that, I have no idea when you would ever want to dial these things up. Like I said, I mean, I guess if you were blasting around in the sand dunes and you just were really punishing the machine, then maybe you'd want to ratchet them up a little bit. But I think that for most people who are going to trail ride these, you know, out in the woods and that kind of thing, it's going to be a little bit too firm if you do that, so you're going to want to go all the way down to the bottom setting. Both machines suffer from being a little bit too firm, but they both feel about the same to me when I get on either one of these machines. In terms of, you know, rebound and compression and everything, they feel pretty similar. So as far as suspension goes, I'm going to say it's a draw, pretty much a tie here. Now power-wise, we've already talked about that. The horsepower level is almost identical. They both have CVTs. The curb weight on both machines is almost identical, within maybe 15 pounds of each other. So as far as acceleration and speed, they're pretty daggone similar in that regard also. This one just came out of its break-in period. This one's still in its break-in period. So later on, we're going to do a video where we drag race these things just for fun and see if the more expensive 750 can really outrun the less expensive 570. But for now, I can just tell you that they feel pretty similar because I haven't really gotten on this one yet since it's still in the break-in period. So that covers power and suspension. Like I said, both have 25-inch tires on them. So really, the differences come in when it boils down to like the ergonomics and usability of the machine. That's where the differences are going to be. The Suzuki has a ton of storage. You've got a storage container here that's watertight. You've got two big ones in the back that are watertight, whereas you can see on the Can-Am that you don't have anything up front at all, nothing in the fenders, nothing in the fenders here, nothing back here underneath. All you've got is one container right here in the middle of the rack. It's a pretty good size storage unit, but it's the only one, and it's in the middle of the rack, which is stupid because if you've got a load on your rack, how are you supposed to get to that storage cubby? So as far as storage goes, hands down, the Suzuki is the big winner here. It's got more storage and it's got usable storage. This one has less storage and potentially not even usable storage. The shifter on the Can-Am is really notchy. Super notchy. Sometimes it's just a real pain in the rear end, to be honest. Hard to find the gear that you want. Hard to get it into the gear that you want. It's a real annoying transmission to use. The Suzuki is the smoothest one that I've ever used. This thing is buttery smooth. I mean, I can sit here right now and just like it's nothing. You can tell that they designed this and engineered this to be the best in the world. And I mean, you know, the Can-Am, the Polaris, they both have this notchy issue. The Suzuki doesn't. But one thing I do like about the Can-Am, it has a park position in the transmission, and the Suzuki does not. And I find that to be kind of interesting. I don't know why Suzuki decided to go that way. It's got a high, low, neutral, and reverse. So if you're going to stop and get off the machine, the only choice you've got is to hit neutral and then set your park brake. Over here, you can put it in park. You can still set your park brake, so you got, you know, two safety mechanisms there keeping you from rolling away. Whereas here, you're just relying on the brakes, and I don't really like that. I wish Suzuki had a park position in the transmission. So I'm still going to give the win to the Suzuki because it's just so much easier to use. It shifts so much better. But I do wish it had a park position on it. Now let's talk about power steering. That's one of the big reasons that I wanted to buy a nicer machine. The Can-Am, I think, has a little bit of an advantage on the power steering. It seems to have a little bit more assistance to it, and it has some adjustment in the dash display here where you can kind of tweak it a little bit. The Suzuki, you can tell that it has power steering, and from what I have read, in 2019 they updated the KingQuad and they made the power steering unit a little stronger, 30% more assistance, but in my opinion it could still use a little bit more. Like I said, you can tell it has power steering, but it's not giving you a lot of assistance. And I guess at high speed that could be a little bit of an advantage to help you maintain better control. But most of the time, we're at low and moderate speeds out on the trails. And, you know, the reason I wanted power steering was to give my old worn out back and shoulders a little bit of a break, you know. So the more assistance I can get, the happier I'm going to be. And I just don't feel like the Suzuki has enough power steering assistance. I wish they would dial this up just a little bit more. The Can-Am, like I said, seems to have more power steering assistance and adjustability. So I got to give the win in that category to the Can-Am. Four-wheel drive. Obviously on the Can-Am you got Visco lock, which is all automatic. There's nothing else to do. You flip the switch, put it in four-wheel drive, and the viscous coupling in the front end does what it does. So it gives you great traction. And we've just been out tonight in the mud, on the hills, doing some pretty nasty stuff, some technical terrain, and the Visco lock did really well. The Suzuki here, when you put it in four-wheel drive, it does have a Torsen style limited slip in the front. I read that in a couple of places. I wasn't able to confirm it, but when I was using it tonight in four-wheel drive, it did seem like that both front tires were fighting for traction. Even if one of them was up in the air, it would still kind of spin a little bit looking for traction. So it does seem like it has some kind of a limited slip in the front end. And you can also fully lock it. There's a lever right there on the handlebars. You can completely lock it up. So I kind of like this approach because it works almost identically to the Can-Am when you're in four-wheel drive, but it also adds the ability to fully lock it up, which is nice. So four-wheel drive system, I'm going to give the win to the Suzuki. Other than that, the Suzuki has a couple of features here that I really kind of like. For one thing, I like the way the parking brake works. It's a little bit easier to use. I like the fact that it's got an independent rear and front brake, which the Can-Am does not. You know, there's a couple little things here that they do differently. The Japanese machines are just a little bit different than the North American machines, if you will. The seating position on the Suzuki, in my opinion, is nicer. My son likes the Can-Am better, so it's all personal preference. But I just don't like how on the Can-Am and the Arctic Cat, you're sitting up on the machine. I've talked about this in the last couple of videos. You sit real high, your thighs at a downward angle. It just doesn't feel comfortable to me. On the Japanese machines, you're sitting kind of in the machine, down on it, a little bit lower, like you're sitting in a chair. It's just a more comfortable position. So I really like that. All right, so the other day, we're going to talk about maintenance now. This one got through the break-in period, so we decided to do the oil change on it ourselves. So the other day, we went and bought a Can-Am oil filter, and I already had some oil for it, so we began to do this process. Now, an oil and filter change should take 15 minutes, okay? I mean, it just shouldn't be a big job. But we spent 2 hours fighting with this thing. The way that the oil filter is designed, first of all, it's not a nice spin-on filter. It's one of those elements with a cover over it. So you have to be real careful with those 3 bolts. You got to check that O-ring on that cover, otherwise you can end up with leaks. But also, the way they have this designed, the oil filter's back here behind the plastics on your right-hand side, down by your foot, and there's no way to get to it. As far as I can see, there's no way to get to it without taking the plastics off the machine. So we had to get in here, start removing plastics. The little plastic rivets and screws, and it was just a real pain just to get access to the oil filter now. And then in the process, of course, we dropped the bolt, which went down somewhere in the skid plate, so we ended up taking the skid plate off too. And ended up having to go to the hardware store and find another bolt because we lost one of them. It was just a real nightmare. There's no reason for it. I mean, there's just no reason for these engineers to design something that stupid when they know that people are going to want to get in here frequently and service these things. You're going to be riding them in the dirt, the sand, the mud. You're going to have to get in here and service this stuff frequently, and you need to have easy access, and you just don't. Taking the plastics off just to get to the oil filter is ridiculous. And how hard it is to get these plastics off is ridiculous. On the Honda Rancher, you could literally unsnap it by hand and take this whole thing off, and in a matter of 10 seconds, you had access to everything on and around the engine. It was genius. Not going to happen with a Can-Am, I can promise you that. On the Suzuki, I can squat down and look at the oil filter right here. It's a nice spin-on filter. It's right there. I could reach my hand in there, take it off, put the new one on, and I'm done. Piece of cake, which is the way it should be. That's even easier than the Honda, to be honest. So as far as maintenance goes, the winner is the Suzuki. You can tell the Japanese engineers think about this kind of stuff. They know that people are going to want to get in here and service these things, and they don't make it a 2-hour chore on you. Now, some of you guys are going to say, I service my Can-Am all the time and it doesn't take 2 hours. All right, fine. I believe you, but it's definitely a lot harder than it should be. So as far as maintenance goes, Suzuki all the way. At the end of the day, the fit and finish is pretty much the same on both machines. I don't like the way stuff's put together over here, which I just went through, but the fit and finish is pretty nice on both machines. I still kind of give the nod to the Suzuki. Ergonomically, it's better. Functionally, it's better. It's got more storage. It shifts better. It has a real locker. It's easy to maintain. It's a single-cylinder engine, which means it uses less fuel. This one drinks fuel like it's sponsored by OPEC. So there's just a lot of advantages here to the Suzuki machine, yes, it's $1,500 more money, but in my opinion, it is worth it. However, I will say that both of these machines are really nice. They're fun. This one has a lot of power. The V-twin engine sounds like heaven. Can't wait to put some aftermarket exhaust on this thing. It sounds so good. It's kind of like owning a V8 truck. It drinks gas like crazy, but man, it sounds so good and it's so fun to drive, and it's just music to your ears every time you turn the key. That's how this Can-Am is, you know. So there's something to be said for the single cylinder. It's powerful, it's snappy, fuel efficient, simple, but there's also something to be said for the V-twin because it sounds good, it's punchy, and it just delivers a lot of smooth power. Speaking of that, one thing I have noticed about the Suzuki, which is interesting, is that it has a, I don't even know exactly what it is. It sounds like some kind of valve train tapping or noise. You know, it's a clack, 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 clack when you're riding it. And this isn't the only Suzuki machine that I've had that's done this. All of those Arctic Cats that I've told you about that I've had in the past, most of those had Suzuki engines in them, believe it or not. Arctic Cat had a relationship with Suzuki for a long time. And those did the same thing, you know, it's almost like a popping noise. I can't really describe it. You guys may know what I'm talking about, but when you start this engine up, you can just hear a lot of clatter. And I guess it's normal since they all do it, but it's kind of disconcerting. I don't really know what the deal is with that. Other single cylinder brands don't seem to do that. So not really sure what the deal is. You know, when I get past the break-in period, we'll check the valve lash and all that stuff on there and make sure everything's good to go. But it doesn't seem to affect the operation of it. It's still strong and delivers smooth power. So I really like the machine. You know, the fuel fill is down next to the seat by your butt on both machines. This one's on this side, this one's on the other side. So I kind of like having it on this side because it's the same side that your pickup truck filler is going to be on. So it just makes it a little easier. You can check the oil level in both machines really easily. At least that's easy to get to on both machines. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. The Suzuki has a 2-inch receiver, whereas the Can-Am does not. Just depends on what you're going to use. You know, if you're just going to pull a cart around your property, you know, or something like that, or maybe pull implements with it, then this would be absolutely fine. On the other hand, the 2-inch receiver gives you more options because you can still pull those things, but you can also use the same ball that you use on your truck if you want to just go, you know, move a trailer around real quick. So the 2-inch receiver is kind of nice. And I think I've basically covered everything. I guess all in all, at the end of the day, both of these machines are really capable. They will do just about the exact same chores and perform almost exactly the same out on the trail. Which one you like the best is going to come down to personal preference. I kind of tend to like the Japanese machines. They have, in my opinion, better features, better storage, better ergonomics, and you just kind of get more machine with these Suzukis. So I kind of like this one a little bit better, but they're both great machines. And I guess if I had to pick one to keep and one to get rid of, I would probably let the Can-Am go, but it's his, so that's not going to happen. Anyway, that's kind of the roundup on these machines, and I can't wait to get through the break-in period on the Suzuki because I want to open it up and see what that 750's really got. That should be interesting. So for now, I appreciate you guys watching. This is kind of a mid-bore ATV shootout. There are ATVs on the market from Can-Am, from Polaris, maybe some others that have more power than either of these, but I feel like 50 horsepower is about the sweet spot. It's enough horsepower to do anything you need. If you want to run a larger tire, you can. If you need to do some work around the farm, you can. It's plenty of power to blast through the woods, but it's not so much power that it's overpowering the machine, which can be dangerous. You know, some of those 850 HO and 1000 cc ATVs, quite frankly, can be dangerous, especially if you don't really know what you're doing. So I think 50 horsepower is kind of the sweet spot, and these things are still somewhat affordable at less than $10,000. So I feel like most people are probably shopping these things. These are, in my opinion, two of the better machines in this category. So you can't really go wrong with either, but This one's my favorite. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later. All right, so this is the first ride on this Suzuki KingQuad 750. Got 1 hour on the machine, and the break-in period, according to the owner's manual, is 10 hours. So it says not to go beyond full throttle, or excuse me, don't go beyond half throttle for the first 10 hours. Kind of take it easy, no heavy towing, any of that kind of stuff. It says it's very important, so I'm going to adhere to the rules and take it easy. It's going to kill me, but I'm going to do it. Do everything the right way here. So let's take it out and kind of see what it feels like. This new bridge that they built is really nice. A whole lot nicer than the old one that used to be here. So I've got these tires at 5 PSI because that's what the manual recommended. But I'm going to tell you what, I can already tell that they're pretty slippery out here. It's funny what a big difference the tires really make. I mean, the Honda had those Maxxis tires on it. I felt like they did really great for a factory tire. You know, I mean, they were kind of mild also, but they did a really good job. And when we get down here in the creek, those Carlisle Trail Wolf tires that are on the Can-Am are a little bit more slippery, and these are the 489s that you see on a lot of ATVs. And these things, I just never have really liked these tires. I had these on the Polaris Sportsman 570. Ended up having a flat, had to put a tube in one of them. The traction wasn't that great. That's the only thing so far that I'm gonna knock this Suzuki KingQuad for, is the really cheap tires that they put on these things. I mean, for the MSRP that they put on these machines, you would think that they'd be able to give you a better tire. But anyway, we'll head on down the creek and just kind of see how this thing does. We're gonna trade machines here for a minute so I can get some video of the KingQuad, and then I'm gonna ride it some more, and then I'll tell you what I think about it. But right off the bat, I'll go ahead and tell you that the ride is not as plush as the Honda. It's kind of strange because the Honda is the least expensive and simplest in terms of build. It's got that solid rear axle and everything under it, but it rides really good. I mean, they've got that thing dialed in perfectly. So it's the best riding ATV I've been on out of the Arctic Cats and the Polaris, Suzuki, Can-Am. I gotta say that Honda is the best riding machine out there. And yes, I do have the shocks all the way to the softest setting. The turn radius on it is a little bit better than this Can-Am, but not quite as good as the Honda. That's something else that Rancher was really sweet for, was the turn radius. You see how we had to just do a 3-point turn there, and it looks like I'm gonna have to do the same. I might make it. Yeah, I'm gonna make it. But yeah, that Honda would go right through these areas, no sweat. Having to do another 3-point turn here to get between these trees. I'm gonna try and swing this Can-Am out real wide and then See if I can make it here. Ah, he's got to back up again. Oh man, this thing is notchy. That shifter on this Can-Am is super notchy. I can't stand it. But it is what it is, I guess, huh? There was a guy that was asking me how I like riding these ATVs now that I've had a couple of side-by-sides. And this is the advantage of the ATVs right here, is that you can just simply go more places. I mean, that's just all there is to it. There's a lot of places where a UTV just won't fit, but an ATV will go just about anywhere that you can walk, for the most part. Kind of like on the Can-Am, you can see that that independent rear suspension is not really doing a lot. It's not cycling, you know, it's not really flexing any. It doesn't give you a whole lot of comfort, to be honest. Woo, rough ride right here. So I've always kind of wondered what the advantage is on those independent rear suspensions. Like, why do they insist on putting these really complicated independent rear suspensions on these machines if they're not going to flex and ride better and articulate better? You know, I mean, what's the point? But like I said, I guess it comes down to ground clearance. You know, if you're going through rock gardens and stuff like this, you do tend to scratch the bottom of the machine less with that independent suspension. And he's right, this thing is brand new, so it's burning off all that new stuff. You know, the exhaust gets hot, starts burning off, and it really smells bad. That Suzuki really smells bad. I mean, it's got a horrible smell back here behind it. Must be something about the manufacturing process. Looks like we're gonna have to use the, oh no, he got it. 4-wheel drive, that thing will go, it'll go good. Goes a couple of other guys. Got its first mud on it. Yeah, riding in these rocky areas like this, the power steering really is nice. It has a tremendous amount of torque. I mean, I'm in low range, of course, but I'm just barely even on the throttle, and it'll drive over these rocks. I felt like for the power level that it made, the Rancher actually had a lot of low-end torque, but this KingQuad 750, man, it's got all kinds of torque. You just barely give it throttle, and it'll walk right over anything.